Okay, so we're moving on to our keynote presentation for this morning. Our keynote will be given by Dr. Soyeon Ahn, who's a professor from Kennesaw State University. She's a professor of social studies education, specifically at Kennesaw State. She received BS and MS degrees in social studies education from Seoul National in South Korea, and PhD degree in curriculum and instruction from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. As a former high school social studies teacher, Dr. Ahn is currently a teacher educator of elementary social studies education. Her teaching and research center on anti-racist curriculum and pedagogy and teaching about Asian American history. Her current project investigates anti-racist pedagogy in elementary classrooms, research funded by the Spencer Foundation. She's also contributed to Smithsonian and PBS curriculum projects regarding Asian American history education. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and the upsurge of anti-Asian hate and violence, Dr. Ahn has been interviewed and had her teaching and research cited in many media outlets, including CNN, the New York Times, Reuters, and Vox. She is also the recipient of a 2022 Distinguished Professor Award from Kennesaw State University, as well as a Distinguished Researcher Award from the American Educational Research Association, Research on the Education of Asian and Pacific Americans, SIG. Her talk today is entitled Asian Americans in 50 States, K through 12 U.S. History Curriculum. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ahn.
Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here with you today in this space. My name is Soyeon Ahn, Professor of Social Studies Education at Kennesaw State. So the research that I'm going to share with you this morning is about Asian Americans in 50 states in K-12 U.S. History Curriculum Standard. So before we begin, let me briefly introduce myself, situate myself in this study and also in this space. I'm currently non-disabled middle-class sister woman and also Asian settler of Korean ancestry living in Atlanta, Georgia, which is stolen land of Cherokee and Muscogee territory. Given my positionality and privilege, I'm constantly in the process of unpacking my own privilege, right? I'm constantly in the process of unpacking my Asian settler colonialism, anti-Black racism, ableism, classism, and cis-heteronormativity. I'm an elementary social teacher educator, curriculum scholar, and mother scholar. So I'm engaged with my own students, my own children, and also the larger social studies teacher education community so that we can transform the classroom so that all children's humanity and their history are celebrated and acknowledged. So my study, the impetus behind the study that I'm working on is Atlanta spa shooting. It was really tragic, right? 2021, March 16, 21-year-old white man, he traveled to 3 different spa locations and he killed 8 people. 6 of the victims were Asian immigrant women. I myself is an Asian immigrant woman living 15 minutes away from the spa location. It was beyond devastating. Yet I wasn't surprised, like many of you in this room, because since the beginning of the pandemic, we've seen one case after another Asian American and Asians being scapegoated. So for example, one of the early example was California. This is February 2020, which means that just 1 month after the first US COVID case was identified. Right here in California, 16-year-old high school kid, he was beaten up by high school peers at the school. He had to go to the emergency room. And the bullies said, well, we did this because, all COVID, because it happened because of key people like him. Another month later, this is Minnesota, March 2020. Again, really at the beginning stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Asian American family, they found that this hateful note taped to their front door after when they come back after work. the note says, we are watching you, FC, take your Chinese virus back to China. We don't want you to here infecting us with this disease. Another month later, this is Texas, April in 2020, Burmese American man with his two children, like age 2-year-old and 6-year-old. They went to grocery shopping, the Sam's Club, and the 19-year-old guy approached them, and this is what he did. And to the police officer, he said, well, Chinese are infecting people with the coronavirus. It's tragic, right? So according to Stop AAPI, the self-reporting anti-Asian hate crime report site, 2020, the first year of this pandemic, we have like almost up to 3,000 anti-Asian hate harassment and hate crimes cases. And then 2020, 2021, the 2 year in total, we have more than 10,000 reported, self-reported cases of anti-Asian harassment and hate crime. This is a lot, right? Yet, although it's a lot, it's not surprising. According to historian and political scientists and anthropologists, blaming a racially marginalized group for introducing and spreading disease is nothing new in this United States. Actually, we have this, like, you know, I mean, in America, we have a unfortunate history, right? The long history of racializing epidemics. So if you see this, like the diagram, 1832, when there was a cholera was spreading out in New York, it was poor Irish new immigrants who were scapegoated. 1900 with the tuberculosis, it was Jewish immigrants were targeted. 1916 with the polio, now it's time for the Italian immigrants are blamed. 1980 with the AIDS epidemic, some of us old enough, we lived through that epidemic, right, worldwide. Along with the gay community, Haitian immigrants were targeted. 2009 with the H1N1, it was Mexican immigrants, and then we have COVID-19, the Chinese and Asian Americans are targeted. On the bottom, I wanted to highlight, the reason I put those is that COVID-19 is not the first time Asian American being scapegoated during the pandemic. Early on, 1817 with the smallpox, 1899, bubonic plague, or more recently, 2003, SARS, we've seen a similar case. Then we wonder why Asians become like easy scapegoat during like public health crisis. Well, the first group, like the large number of Asians entering the United States were the Chinese laborers, right? As soon as they arrived, the dominant white society, they racialized the Chinese migrant as a yellow peril, which means these Chinese and AKA Asians are in general, they are threat to the United States, not only racially or culturally, they are also threat to the United States economically, politically, and even public health-wise. So for example, this is a racialization of Asians as a dangerous public health threat. So on the right or left here, this is a Watson magazine cover page, 1882, published in San Francisco, May 26. So Watson, this is like these days like a people's magazine, people's magazine kind of thing, the popular magazine. This magazine cover page, if you see there's dangerous 3 ghosts are hovering, right? If you see their dress in the middle, it says smallpox in the middle, left, malarium, right, leprosy. And then under them, where they are hovering over, it's a San Francisco Chinatown. So the idea is that, hey, people, watch out. Chinese people and Chinatown is where this horrible disease is starting and spreading out. So the idea that the Chinese or Asian migrant in general are the public health threat. Right? On the right or left over there, these two are the like a commercial, like a cover page, the cover of the rat killer. You know, these days we also need the pest control, right? But back in the day, they need the pest control, like, you know, for sewage system, like every household need to buy the rat killer. These are 2 examples of the rat killer cover, I don't know, painting or something. So in the middle, it's a rough-on rat, right? It clears out rats, mice, bedbugs, flies, and roaches as efficiently as in the middle, Chinese eating the rats, right? The idea that Chinese people are savages eating like rats, bedbugs, and mice kind of thing. On the right, on the far right, it's about, that is a lot cheaper. It's just 10 cents per box. If you buy my product, it'll kill out all the like rats in your household, right? That even the title of this regular, the Chinese poison. So the idea that these Chinese folks are the savages who eating these horrible things, so no wonder, right? If there are any diseases like spreading out, it's because of the people like the Chinese. So that's why 1899, when bubonic plague spreading in Honolulu, Hawaii, the Hawaii Board of Health right away, they say, oh, this is Chinatown problem. So that exactly the health official, exactly what he said was plagues, leaves, and breathing filth. When he got to Chinatown, he found its natural habitat. Again, Chinatown is the ghetto where this horrible disease begin. Instead of thinking about why Chinese people are segregated in that Chinatown or the ghetto, right? It already is structural racism, right? Because they were not allowed to live and buy a house in the white residence or the nice place. So they are living in poor housing, but forget about it, they are just dirty people. That's why their town is dirty, right? They don't see it yet. So then the Hawaii city government, when there's like during the bubonic plague, they quarantined, they put 10,000 Chinese people in the Chinatown, they locked them up, they put like a cordon around this Chinatown so they cannot cross the borderline. So then what the government wanted, they didn't want these dirty, sickly Chinese people infecting the white residents of Honolulu. They also burned down Chinese home in the Chinatown, but the Mother Nature didn't help during that time. Like there's a huge windstorm, so the house burning should end within a day, but it actually burned down 17 days nonstop. So it pretty much like wiped out whole Chinatown, leaving 4,000 people, Chinese people, homeless. The government didn't pay anything. Before actually they quarantined the Chinese people in the Chinatown for the bubonic plague, they asked them to like come to the public bath and to get the fumigation shower. So we need to first kill out your like all the like the germs on your body, then we will quarantine you. But as you see, right, people can walk by, can see your naked body. Truly, they dehumanize this group. 1 year later, bubonic plague arrived in California, San Francisco. Then like San Francisco's Board of Health, they like a panic. Oh my gosh, did you see that what happened in Honolulu? We need to take this pandemic under control right away, otherwise it will be disaster. So they did a similar thing, like quarantine Chinese people, like 14,000 Chinese people in the Chinatown. They did a house burning. One thing the Hawaii government didn't do, but San Francisco government did was a forced vaccination. So like this is right, the vaccine. During that time, also researchers like in panic of the bubonic plague, they were like experimenting with what vaccine should work. So actually that vaccine was not even tested safe to use it. The researchers still experimenting. But the city government, no, we cannot wait for you to like test safe, whatever. All the Chinese people, Asian residents of San Francisco, you guys lined up and you need to get this shot. It's not okay, right? They should be anti-vaxxer, right? They should be they have a right to be anti-vaxxer in that case. Fast forward to 2003 SARS. In the United States, it's not even a huge pandemic. Nobody died of SARS, only 76 cases. It wasn't even confirmed. It's it looks like SARS, right? The first case SARS began in China. Then like people, whoa, right? Even if it wasn't a pandemic in the United States at all, but if you see the political cartoon in newspaper, everybody know what that means, right? The message, hey people, don't patronize Chinese restaurant, don't go to Chinatown. These Chinese folks are the SARS carrier, right? The history repeats. And we see the similar case during the pandemic. Because the first COVID was identified in China, then people in United States, in the midst of public panic and anxiety, it's because of the Chinese people. Then anybody who look like Chinese, you are my enemy. So we see the like the same thing continue. Another thing, Asian Americans, we are not only like a scapegoat during the public health crisis, we were also easy scapegoat during the economic and the military crisis. One of the things, during the 1870 economic crisis, like the poor working class white folks, they saw that Chinese and other Asians are my life sucks because of you. You stole my job away. So then this anti-Asian like a mob violence and massacre, it was horrible, right? And the similar thing like during when American economy is not good, Asian become the easy scapegoat. One of the tragic cases was the murder of Vincent Chin, like around the 1980 when American economy is really going down, particularly auto industry. These two white men who recently laid off, their enemy is Japan because they lost their job because the American auto industry doesn't do well. Why? Because of Japanese cars are selling much better than the American cars. So they were mad about the Japan or Japanese, right? But then when they saw the Vincent, who was not even Japanese American, he was Chinese American, but in their eye, it doesn't matter. He is my enemy, Japanese. So they murdered him. So this tragic case, right? Something happened in the United States and somewhere in Asia, then somehow people who live in United States, who have Asian ancestry, we become the easy scapegoat. During the military crisis too, Asia become easy scapegoat, like during World War II when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Then suddenly anybody who looked like a Japanese, right, we become the nation's enemy. So more than 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry in the West Coast, they had to go to the incarceration camp until the war ended. Similar case during like September 11, right after September 11 terrorist attack. Then like anybody who looked like Osama bin Laden, right, which include Arab American, Muslim American, and South Asian, our brother and sister, they become the target of hate crime. So Asian, right, the history, the lesson that we can draw from the history is that despite that we Asian now, Asian American, we are seen as a modern market. Oh yeah, you're not like a black, brown troublemaker, you are the good ones. No, that's BS, right? Whenever something happened, right? Something happened between US and Asia relation, or like something, the public health crisis, military economic crisis, Asian, we are seen as like a dangerous foreign threat, right? We are the dangerous foreign threat. So in the peaceful time, it's maybe dormant, but whenever in times of national crisis, then people say, go back to your country. We don't need you here anymore. So as an educator, curriculum scholar, and I can see that like poor education is a problem, which means good education is, I think, it's a starting point. Truly, curriculum matters. Like as Ms. Council member Ms. Kim said, like what we teach and not teach is truly matter. The curriculum truly matter. Creedle, Hugh, and King, this scholar, they said when they see that one case after another, the black brown bodies are killed by white policemen. This is what exactly they say. Quote, while violence on an black body occur on the street, the idea of violence against the black body begin in the classroom. So then, the people, like those who are mercilessly attacking black body on the street, the idea that these folks' lives doesn't matter, it begins in the classroom. If your teachers, if your textbooks, if you're like, whatever the lesson that you're getting from school is portray people of color as like, unassimilable, un-American, or like, unworthy, then people think, oh, your life doesn't matter. So then what we teach, not teach, truly matter. So exclusion and misrepresentation of people of color in school textbook or the taught lesson, enacted lesson, it becomes the source of violence. First, it becomes the source of a psychological violence because it tells the students of color that your people doesn't matter, right? Your people's history, your people's humanity, it doesn't matter. So it becomes a psychological violence. And also this misrepresentation or exclusion of people of color becomes a source of physical violence because those majority group thinking, oh, these folks doesn't matter to, these folks doesn't matter, their life doesn't matter, that it allows and justify and ignore the physical violence against the black, brown, Asian, and other marginalized groups. So education truly matter. With that, I engaged the current research. After Atlanta spot shooting, I was devastated. I have a school children going to Georgia public school. I got mad, so mad, out of my rage. Let me look at, with the research question was what we as a nation, whether or not are we teaching Asian American history, are we teaching the history and humanity of Asian Americans in this US history curriculum. So I collect all 50 states, K-12 US history curriculum standard, and I analyzed. One of the unfortunate finding, 18 states out of 50 states has a 0 Asian American history content. Not 0. Most of the state has just only 1 or 2 or 3 events included. So bottom line, we as a nation, we barely teach Asian American history. For those states who include Asian American history in their curriculum standard, as you might guess, right, there's number 2 events, like most of the states include, if they teach Asian American history. 1, Japanese American incarceration. Number 2, the Chinese Exclusion Act, or the early Chinese immigration. So, but then most of the case, you see just only 1 state including. Bottom line, we don't know what is Asian American history is about. Pretty much whenever it's about Asian American history, it's then Japanese incarceration and early Chinese migration. That's pretty much too. Asian American, our story, we are much richer, much complex, much more diverse than these 2 historical events. And when I analyze those included events, what messages, right, those included events or historical figures presenting, the image of the Asian American is about the majority of images of victims of natives racism, like a Japanese incarceration, right? The Japanese were the actually victim of natives racism, or the new arrival, like early Chinese migrant. We are the new one, we are the recent one. So we don't have a claim, we don't have any claim to we belong to this nation, right? We are the new arrival or the poor victim. We are Asian Americans are barely seen as a contributor to this nation, or the Asian, the least one was about the change maker. We are not seen as a civil rights activist. We are not seen as a the fighting for the equality and justice in this nation. So the unfortunate conclusion from my study is that our official curriculum, the school textbook or the school or the history curriculum standard, it actually acts more likely the source of violence instead of source of humanity and safety, because we don't teach about them. Or if we teach about them really like the superficial way, right? Asians are just a poor victim, they don't have agency, they don't have resistance, they don't have any diversity, they are just poor victim or the new arrival who has a little claim to this state. So one thing I want to highlight is though, like for those 18 states who has a zero Asian American history content, then we might think, oh my God, the kids, poor thing, the kids who live in those states, they will never learn about Asian American history. We need to be careful. State standards are really different. It's like apple to orange kind of comparison. We need to be careful with the comparison, right? Because one of the biggest difference between the state standard is whether the standard is content-based or whether the standard is theme-based. Some of the states really like, the content-based, they list everything that teacher need to cover. When you teach about World War II, talk about this. In comparison, the state standard, which is really theme-based, they say they don't list out all the specific events. They just say, talk about, teachers please teach about the key events or the key historical figure during World War II. So I'll show you the difference between the two. So for example, South Dakota, both New York and South Dakota. New York is really a content-specific standard. South Dakota is really theme-based. So both of them are high school standards about the World War II. South Dakota, it says, hey teachers, you need to make sure that students can directly explain the cause and events and consequences of the Second World War II, including issues at home and abroad. It doesn't say teach about FDR, teach about, Hitler, teach about like a Pearl Harbor. It doesn't say it, right? It just said teach the important, what is the cause, what is the consequence, right? It just gives the freedom for the teachers what to highlight. But when it comes to New York, they really list out every single thing. New York examined the reason for the FDR's executive order for Japanese removal, the impact of removal on Japanese people living in the US, and the Supreme Court decision in Korematsu case. You see the difference between the two, right? So some state, like for example, these 18 states, you feel like, wow, how come they don't include any of Asian American history? Well, that means they don't really list out Black history, they don't really list out the Latinx history. They just say broadly theme-based. These are the important events and the concepts or themes. Specific the content, it's up to you, the teachers. So it really kind of gives the freedom, academic freedom to the teachers. Then the problem is, then what might need to be happen? Then the teachers should have this good understanding of all different like ethnic studies history, right? Otherwise, if I'm like, let's say I'm not Asian American, I don't know nothing about Asian American history. Oh, World War II, teaching about the important events of World War II. I can only talk about what happened in Europe here. Nothing about happened to Japanese American incarceration or during the the Korean American community or animosity between these two groups, right? So it depends on whether or not we are doing a good job preparing our teachers to teach ethnic studies. Otherwise, we just settle for failure. You see the difference, right? So that is the theme-based. If the theme-based state standard, then we really need to do a good job with the teacher education. If the content-based, then it just lists out every single thing. Then our struggle is that we need to get on the standard revision team. Whenever standard revised, then people we need to get on, and we need to make sure that everybody's voice is to be included. Otherwise, teachers say, oh, I have so many, yeah, I know that I need to teach about Asian American history, but it's not included in my standard. I have millions of other things. I don't have time. So that is the two different struggles. For those the standard that the state which has a content-specific standard, but you can see some states are really inclusive, some states are quite not. So these two examples, direct example is about Tennessee and Minnesota. Both of them high school standard about the civil rights movement, 1950, 1960, 1970 civil rights movement. When you see the Minnesota, it includes the Asian American movement, Yellow Power movement, but when you see the Tennessee, it doesn't. So Minnesota, right, high school, students should be able to explain the roots of the various civil rights movement, including African American, the Black Freedom Movement, Native American Red Power Movement, Women Movement, Latinx Movement, Asian American Movement, right? So the Minnesota makes sure that students, or high school students will learn about not only Black freedom struggle during the civil rights era, but also Red Power Movement, the Chicano movement, Yellow Power movement, the feminist movement. Compared to the Tennessee, look at Tennessee, Director analyze how the American Indian movement, Chicano movement, feminist movement are related to the civil rights movement in advancing equality across the broad spectrum of American society during this time period. Right? What about Asian American over here? So you see that even if the content-specific standards, some states are inclusive, other states may not inclusive. So there's some difference. So that's what I wanted to highlight. It's hard to compare, state by state because it's apple to orange, content-specific, theme-based. So it's a different struggle. So my work in Georgia, because although I'm speaking to many of you are based in California, I just shared about what's happening in Georgia. Georgia standards are really content specific. We list every single thing that teacher need to cover. So Georgia first grade is all about American hero. Then the first grade in Georgia, they learn about American. These are the American hero chosen by the power that be in Georgia. Ben Franklin, start with the Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Louis St. Clair with the Sacagawea, Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington Carver, and Ruby Bridge. These are the important American heroes. Pretty much great white men, right? Start with the great white men. Yeah, maybe if we don't talk about Louis St. Clair, I'm sure Sacagawea won't include it. So one indigenous woman, just one person. And George Washington Carver and Ruby Bridge are the black heroes, right? We don't see any Chicano heroes. We don't see any the Asian American heroes over here, right? This is a snapshot, first grade, the first imprint of what America is about. So in the Ruby Bridge, right? So then me as a mother sending my kids to Georgia Public, so I'm pissed off, right? So I work with my child's school district. So I pushed the first grade teachers in my child's school district so that when kids are learning about Ruby Bridge, using the Ruby Bridge as an entry point so that students can learn about not only black girl, but also about Asian, Latinx, and indigenous girl who also fought against the school segregation. So for example, Mamie Tape, some of you know, some of us, who's that girl? So Mamie was a Chinese American girl born in, growing up in California, in San Francisco around the 1880. She was born in United States, so she was a US citizen. So she has a right to attend a public school. But back in the day, during this time, California provided segregated school for the white, black, indigenous children, but they didn't even provide any public education opportunity for Asian American children. So what Mamie Tape family did, they sued the school district. This is a Tape versus Macaulay 1885, which went all the way up to California Supreme Court. Guess who won the case? Tape family won the case. Another badass girl is Alice Piper. She was a Native American girl growing up in California around 1920. Again, California, they provide a secret Indian boarding school, right? Secret school for the indigenous children, but the education only limited until the elementary basic education. Alice Piper, she wanna go to middle school, high school, she wanna go to college, she wanna be a lawyer, she wanna fight for her tribal nation's sovereignty. But there's no high school for her to attend, so she sued her school district. This is a Piper versus Big Pine School District, 1924. Piper won the case. She's a badass girl, right? Another one, Sylvia Mendez. Many of you know, right? In California, we need to include her, right, in our official curriculum. Sylvia was Mexican American girl in California. Again, Mexican American students during that time, despite they were legally white, but this dominant white group, they say, oh, you are legally white, but yet you speak Spanish, so we'll give you a special treatment. You need to go to Mexican only school so that your language you can We can celebrate your language while you're learning English. Whatever those BS excuse, they segregate the Mexican American children in the Mexican only school. Separate is never equal, right? So Charlie Mendez, along with other Mexican American families, sued the school district, went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which was prior to the Brown desegregate. They ended the segregation for the Mexican students. So these are like through my research along with the legal cases. These are the numbers of the court cases fought around the school segregation. So when we thinking about school segregation, students only think about Brown versus Board of Education, right? So, but prior to Brown, there's almost up to 100 court cases prior to Brown, where the families of color went to the court challenging the segregated and unequal schooling. And then the school segregation, the legal challenge wasn't just fought in the South. It was West Coast, East Coast, and the Midwest, right? And then the first court case against the segregated unequal schooling was fought in Boston, Massachusetts, 1849, right? It was more than 100 years before the Brown case. So then it wasn't the school segregation around the 1950, 1960. The struggle began like more than 100 years before. And Sarah Roberts, she was a 5-year-old black girl who had to walk several miles to go to pass like a white-only school to go to segregated black school. So her family sued the Boston, Massachusetts school district. Although her case lost, but her case literally showed how long, right, the families of color have been fighting for an unequal school system. So that's why, like when, Georgia, we need to talk about the Ruby Bridge. What about students when they learn about Ruby Bridge? Using the Ruby Bridge as an entry point to learn about Asian, Indigenous, and Latinx children, so that how our struggles are related and also different because of who we are, because of our different racialization in this United States. So one day I came in while this is my kids, Terry's classroom, first grade. When the kids are learning about this 4 amazing badass girl, I came in as a mystery reader. I read one children's book, I'm Not a Number, which is about Indian boarding school. My girl was excited, oh my God, there's my mom. But also her friends were so excited to share about what they've been learning, about these 4 amazing girls. After students are learning about these 4 girls, the assessment for that unit was draw the Venn diagram. In Georgia, in first grade, we first time introduced the Venn diagram, so students already know through the math lesson what the Venn diagram is about. So then my daughter, one day, she came, hey, mommy, she unpacked her backpack, mommy, this is what I did, this is what I did. So I saw this one, so hey, Terry, you did a great job. By the way, Terry, let me see, you chose Mamie. So I asked Terry, hey, Terry, why you chose Mamie out of the 4? And Terry said, well, mommy, I like all the 4 girls' story. They are amazing and brave, but I like Mamie the best because she looked like me. This is a power of multicultural curriculum, right? This is all children love to see themselves. For the Terry's eyes, both Mamie and Terry has a black hair. They both have the same eye color. They believe in herself. They are both brave. But Terry, unlike Mamie, she goes to fair school. She's Korean. She's a 6-year-old living in Georgia. Her family poetry looks like, it seems like all my family have a big round-shaped belly. But Mamie, in eyes of Terry, she went to a fair school. She was Chinese. She was 8 years. She lived in California. This is her family. Again, like first grade level understanding, right? They cannot go really into depth about the complicated history, the racialization, yet they can see what's fair and not fair, right? So this is a power. So I wrote about this amazing curricular transformation. I'm so happy. I'm so glad that the first grade teacher team, my child and the school district teacher, bravely changed their curriculum that used to they teach about the Ruby Bridge. I wrote about their celebrate first graders amazing learning. So those are what's happening in Georgia. In the meantime, we've seen like last year, right, 2020, many of us were in tears when we heard Illinois become the first state that require K-12 Asian American studies in the nation. So it was so inspiring. And follow the Illinois, we have New Jersey, Connecticut, and recently Rhode Island become the 4th state in the nation requiring K-12 Asian American studies. And Georgia, we are working on it. More broadly, we have a K-12 ethnic studies movement, right? The ethnic studies movement began in like 1960s statistics and the college campuses, especially in California. But now that we are moving on to it seems like a renaissance, right? K to 12. Now we need to go down to not only higher education, we need to start when their kids are young. K to 12 ethnic study is so inspiring. I'm so jealous of what's happening. California, Georgia, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but we are working on it. The thing is, while we have this ethnic studies movement, but I think we also need to work on not only about legislation, but also we need to do a good job with the teacher education, right? If the legislature passed, then are we, our teachers ready to teach ethnic studies, including Asian American study? So I'm working with my colleague, Dr. Noreen Nassim Rodriguez. We developed recently, we work with the staff AAPI, San Francisco State. We developed K-12 framework for Asian American studies. So the teachers have a big tool to incorporate Asian American stories. So they are not just, I need to teach about Asian American history. Maybe what about making art and craft? What about making a theme song, right? Celebrate the food. Well, that's great, but it's not just our lessons shouldn't just limit it in the food and fun festival. So we need to go deeper than that, right? So then the framework, this is a snapshot of a framework. So when we really teach about Asian American history, we need to cover many of the important concepts, right? Starting with the identity and then power and oppression. But we are not only about, we are oppressed people. We are also in community and solidarity. We are fighting, we are resisting. So we also need to talk about community and solidarity. And also we need to highlight in the solidarity, in the fight together, we are reclaiming our forgotten history, and also we are creatively celebrating our culture and history. So this big framework, we cannot just focusing on about only identity or only about the oppression or only about the resistance. We need to talk about all of this, right? So you need to provide a really framework. That framework also comes with a teaching consideration based on many years of our teaching experience with our teachers and teacher educator. Indeed, when we teach Asian American history in a rigorous way, we need to avoid the food fun festival approach. We need to move beyond the single story, and we need to highlight the intersectional approach. Teach across the curriculum. It's not just history, social studies, or ELA. We can talk about Asian American history in the STEM curriculum. We can teach about Asian American through the art, right? Even through the PE, we can highlight Asian American athlete like a Sammy Lee. There's so many ways that it's not just a siloed in the social studies history. Be aware of and also we need to address cultural appropriation. We shouldn't appropriate, right? It needs to be cultural appreciation, not the appropriation. Don't ask our children wear the Asian, the traditional costume and there's different way. There's better way to do so. Also, teachers, we need to collaborate with the Asian American community and family, right? And diminish the possible harm and words matter. So these are some of the considerations. So one last thing, it's coming soon. Me and then Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Kim, we work under contract, so it's in press soon. So first time ever in this nation, right? Teaching Asian American history in elementary classrooms. So this book is coming next year around in the summertime. So I'm continuing working with my colleague, my ally, to provide the teachers the tool that they can bring in Asian American history, including Korean American history, in a rigorous way, not just superficial way. So through all those work, right, teaching and research, our hope is that all children, when they hear a hurtful message from the larger society, our students can, say out loud, hey, Asians are not virus. Right? Hispanics are not illegal, Black people are not threat, Muslims are not terrorists, Native Americans are not separatists. Thank you so much.
So we have just a few minutes for a few questions. Maybe we can and just let me say that this room is mic'd up for Zoom. So if you just stand where you are and project your voice, people will be able to hear online. So any questions or comments?
So there's a specific Chinatown history in Santa Ana. So I'm from Santa Ana, I'm a school board member in Santa Ana, and teacher in Anaheim. And in 1902, they literally burned down all of Chinatown in Santa Ana because of leprosy, quote unquote, and they needed a big festival. And so recently, the ethnic studies teachers in Santa Ana, with their students, advocated the city council to issue an apology and recognize that it occurred, right? And so it's the way that ethnic studies can like highlight history, but also do something about it. So I really love your presentation. I'm looking forward to your the children's elementary book. So thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you so much. I think the ethnic studies are really like, we give the right to education to the students, right? Students can they own this education, not just we are feeding them in. So it's so good to hear that students are like, thinking of using their agency to bring the curriculum change. Yes.
Dr. Ahn, thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate your insights so much. My name is Jeff Kim. I'm a teacher in Anaheim Union High School District, and we're writing the Asian American Studies and actually the Korean American Studies course to meet the ethnic studies requirement in K through 12. And so this course is being developed and it'll be submitted to the board for approval. But is there any advice that you have of definitely things that should be included in Asian American Studies, also especially this being Korean American Studies conference as well, Korean American Studies curriculum?
Wow, Jeff, first of all, thank you. And also like my talk, let me go to this one. My talk is more centered on the Asian American history in general, not really zeroing into the Korean American history. But I think although the one framework is not like a one size fit all, but I think the framework is like I think was how can I say, generic enough to kind of like, highlight most important themes across like a specific ethnic group's history. So I think whenever we are any event, right, whether it's Saigu, whether it's about Dosan Anchango, whether it's about the first Asian, like, council member, Ms. Kim, mentioned about like a complex history, right? So one of the things like a community and solidarity, it's a great, we highlighted Asian American, the fight during the Saigu or during the Asian came to the Hawaii sugar plain field, and highlighting their agency, resistance, whether their struggle with oppression is great. But also one of the things under the community and solidarity, it's hard to see if learn. But also one of the sub theme is contention and complexity. So it's not we are not glorifying, right? Because the history is complex. Like, it's not just only Asian Americans or the Korean Americans. We always like amazing. We always in unity, fighting together. No, we hate Japanese hate us. Even within the Korean American community, like we have divergent voices, right? During the Saigu, how the Korean American we were divided about how even we can make sense of even during the spa shooting. Like some of the Korean members, like those are the spa workers, sex workers, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to make it like a big deal. So it's even within our community, there's like a contention and division kind of thing. So whenever I think ethnic studies, we need to like focusing on the humanity, right? The humanity means that nobody's perfect, nobody's amazing. We all have like amazing things and also like, shit things and mistakes. So like really humanizing, humanizing us, highlighting the humanity means like we need to be more talking about the contention and complexity while also we are highlighting their agency and solidarity. And another piece, the Jeff, your thing, I think what I'm seeing is that oftentimes I'm working with the pre-service, the in-service to school teachers. Yeah, when I'm in Georgia, right? Most of them are growing up rural Georgia. They are white, middle class, the women. When I'm focusing on about what happened to Asian American, wow, but it's so tough, but it's so depressing. They are just like depressed because the history, ethnic studies, like what we are, because our stories are so full of struggle, right? Then not only about us, but also other people. We feel like, oh my God, I hate our country. I want to kill myself. There's no hope. So it's about like but then we need to talk about. We are not only celebrating our like food and festival and our agency. We need to talk about oppression. We need to talk about the power, but also we need to highlight the agency and resistance. I think we need to do it together. Otherwise, if we highlight too much of the oppression, then there's no hope, despair. Everybody is like the hopelessness. If we're only highlighting the joy, reclamation, or the agency, then well, it wasn't that a big deal. Martin Luther King, he's a great hero, but it wasn't such a big deal. Well, it was a big deal. Everybody died, right? So I think really like these many of the themes like we need to highlight so then students have a full picture. I think that is always important.
Maybe one more question. So go ahead.
I was wondering about the goal of teaching ethnic studies to our children.
Mm-hmm.
when they learn this, they are frustrating, they are angry. Are we teaching them to revenge to the white people?
No, that is not the goal at all, right? It's not like, I think that's where the anti-CRT movement, the people that they get so much like, the power support from those. I don't want my child, if I'm a white mother, I don't want my kids at first grade, kindergarten classroom, when they learn about Black history or the Asian American history, then the white girl, like, I hate being white, I'm ashamed about who I am, so white people are all racist. That is no, right? But then, those are those anti-CRT, those politicians are getting those whole attraction kind of thing. But good ethnic study, if you are really know that what ethnic study is about, you don't, after you're teaching, it's not that when you leave white kids, I'm ashamed of who I am, or the black girl, black boy, I'm mad at you, I'm gonna kill you because your ancestor did that to us. That is a horrible teaching, right? The real history education, accurate history education, good pedagogy, right? Ethnic studies pedagogy, by teaching, by engaging students, not like, because they're so hard, let's not talk about it. Let's only talk about all the good things. Well, we engaging students who are the really uncomfortable and difficult history, but not leaving at the stage of despair or the anger, but actually having them to feel collective responsibility, right? It's not your fault. You didn't, you are not the killer or we are the descendant of whoever our 40 mother, 40 father, but we as a current generation who got this the legacy, how we can work together to make our country in a better place. So you need to talk about the collective responsibility, right? It's not, your ancestor did this to us, so that I'm black boy, I'm mad at you, white boy, I'm gonna do something with you. That is not, no. And also white children shouldn't feel like they're ashamed of who they are. It's about the ancestors, right? That we need, how can we grapple with those, the historical wrong, how we can work together. So actually, that is another thing. The ethnic studies is not only about the content, the more important thing about the pedagogy. While we are preparing our teachers teaching Asian American history, the Black history, it's not about infusing them with all this content. It's not, that's important, but then how we can bring this a difficult history in a transformative way, engaging you, right? So the pedagogy is the most important, I think, the ethnic studies pedagogy. Although it's not easy, right? That's why it's hard, right? To preparing teachers to do this job well, it's not an easy one.
Please join me in thanking Dr.